Do you remember the criminal lovers who shocked the world in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967? They looked young, fearless, untouchable. But off-screen, their lives unraveled in ways far darker than the film's final ambush. It's not just Alzheimer's or addiction, but sudden deaths no one saw coming. Here's the cast then and now, and how time changed them forever. Michael J. Pollard as C.W. Moss. Michael John Pollard was born on May 30th, 1939, in Passaic, New Jersey. At 28 years old, he played C.W. Moss, the naive, soft-spoken getaway driver in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. His fragile, almost childlike presence gave the film an unexpected vulnerability and earned him Academy Award and BAFTA nominations for Best Supporting Actor in 1968. The vulnerability on screen was not simply performance. Pollard grew up in a working-class Polish-American family. His father managed a bar in New Jersey, and financial instability shaped his early years. He struggled with dyslexia at a time when learning disorders were rarely understood, which contributed to academic failure and emotional frustration. After studying at the Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg's method system in the late 1950s, he slowly built credibility through roles in The Wild Angels, 1966, and later cult films such as Little Foss and Big Halsey, 1970. By the end of the 1960s, he had appeared in more than a dozen television and film projects, yet remained typecast as eccentric outsiders. His private life unraveled as quickly as his fame rose. Pollard married actress Beth Howland in 1961, and they had a daughter, Holly, before divorcing in 1969, during a period of increasing personal instability. He later married Annie Tolstoy, with whom he had a son, Axel Emmett Pollard, but that marriage also ended. In total, Pollard married 4 times. Substance abuse and emotional volatility strained each relationship, and by the late 1970s, his career momentum had slowed significantly despite appearing in films like Roxanne, 1987. Addiction became the defining shadow. Years of alcohol and drug use eroded his physical health and reputation within the industry. While he continued working steadily through the 1980s and 1990s, including a memorable role in Rob Zombie's House of 1,000 Corpses, 2003, major studio opportunities declined. By the early 2000s, his appearances were sporadic, and health complications increasingly limited his mobility. Finally, he died on November 20th, 2019, in Los Angeles from cardiac arrest at age 80. He had acted in more than 60 film and television productions across 6 decades. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was approximately $1.5 million, modest compared to some of his co-stars, yet reflective of a long, unconventional career that left a lasting cult legacy. Warren Beatty as Clyde Barrow. Henry Warren Beatty was born on March 30th, 1937, in Richmond, Virginia. At 30 years old, he played Clyde Barrow, the charming, calculating outlaw in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. His performance did not just carry the film, it helped ignite the new Hollywood revolution. But that experiences came from a home ruled by tension. Beatty grew up under a strict father, Ira Owens Beatty, whose struggle with alcohol cast a heavy shadow over the household. Acting became his escape, even as he studied at Northwestern and later trained in New York. Small roles and rejections hardened him. By the time he produced and starred in Bonnie and Clyde, and later directed Reds, he was no longer just chasing fame. He was fighting to prove he could not be controlled. His love life became legend. Affairs with Natalie Wood and Joan Collins fed his image as Hollywood's ultimate bachelor. Then, in 1992, he married Annette Bening. The shift shocked the industry. 4 children followed, and the marriage endured. During these years, he continued to protect his creative empire, revisiting Dick Tracy and developing Rules Don't Apply. After the early 2000s, his appearances grew rare. Rules Don't Apply struggled at the box office, a painful reminder that time spares no icon. The spotlight dimmed, but the weight of decades in Hollywood remained. Today, Warren Beatty is 89 years old. He lives privately with Annette Bening, occasionally stepping into public view to safeguard his body of work. His estimated $90 million fortune reflects decades of acting, directing, producing, and real estate investments. Gene Hackman as Buck Barrow. Eugene Allen Hackman was born on January 30th, 1930, in San Bernardino, California. At 37 years old, he played Buck Barrow, the volatile, loyal older brother of Clyde in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. His explosive performance earned him his first Academy Award nomination and cemented his arrival in New Hollywood. Hackman's childhood was marked by instability and abandonment. His father left the family when Gene was 13, and his mother struggled financially in Danville, Illinois. At 16, he lied about his age to enlist in the U.S. Marine Corps, serving nearly 5 years as a field radio operator. After military service, he studied acting at the Pasadena Playhouse, where instructors once voted him least likely to succeed. Persistence changed that verdict. His breakthrough came with The French Connection, 1971, earning him the Academy Award for Best Actor, followed by a second Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in Unforgiven, 1992. Over 4 decades, he appeared in more than 80 films, including iconic roles as Lex Luthor in Superman, 1978, and Coach Norman Dale in Hoosiers, 1986. Marriage carried its own strain. Hackman married Faye Maltese in 1956, and they raised 3 children, Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie. But decades of filming on location created emotional distance, leading to divorce in 1986 after 30 years together. In 1991, he married classical pianist Betsy Arakawa. The couple settled in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where Hackman focused on writing historical novels, publishing several books between 1999 and 2013. Their marriage lasted more than 3 decades, maintaining an intensely private life away from Hollywood. Health quietly altered the trajectory. Hackman underwent angioplasty in 1990 after heart issues, and later withdrew from acting following Welcome to Mooseport, 2004. In the early 2000s, reports indicated he was living with advanced Alzheimer's disease, which significantly limited public appearances. Neighbors noted increasing frailty in his later years as he remained largely secluded. On February 18, 2025, Gene Hackman died at age 95 from severe heart disease, complicated by advanced Alzheimer's and kidney disease. His wife, Betsy Arakawa, had previously died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome inside their Santa Fe home, leaving him increasingly isolated. At the time of his death, Hackman's estimated net worth was approximately $80 million, built across a career that included 2 Academy Awards, 4 Golden Globes, and decades of defining performances in American cinema. Denver Pyle as Frank Hamer. Denver Del Pyle was born on May 11, 1920, in Bethune, Colorado. At 47 years old, he played Frank Hamer, the relentless Texas Ranger who ultimately brought down Bonnie and Clyde in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. His stern portrayal gave the film its sense of inevitability and final reckoning. His toughness was forged during the Great Depression. Raised on a struggling farm in rural Colorado, Pyle worked manual jobs from adolescence and later labored in Oklahoma and Texas oil fields before moving to Los Angeles in 1940. After World War II, he returned to civilian life and slowly built a resume of minor film roles throughout the 1950s. Television finally brought recognition with recurring appearances as Briscoe Darling on The Andy Griffith Show in the 1960s, and later as Jesse Duke on The Dukes of Hazzard, 1979 to 1985, which averaged more than 20 million weekly viewers at its peak. Fame arrived late, and marriage absorbed its pressures. He married Marilee Carpenter in 1955, and they had 2 sons, David and Tony, before divorcing in 1970 after 15 years together. In 1983, he married Tippi Johnston, remaining with her until his death. Beyond acting, Pyle made shrewd investments in oil wells during the 1970s oil boom. By 1981, when oil prices surged above $35 per barrel, his petroleum earnings exceeded his total income from 3 decades of acting. Then, health shifted the narrative. A longtime smoker, Pyle was diagnosed with lung cancer in the mid-1990s, which forced him to reduce appearances. His final screen role was in The Dukes of Hazzard, Reunion, 1997, marking the end of nearly 5 decades in entertainment. Denver Pyle died on December 25, 1997, at age 77 from lung cancer in Burbank, California. A memorial service was held on January 6, 1998, in Waxahachie, Texas, and he was buried in an unmarked grave at Forest and Cemetery beside members of his second wife's family. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was around $5 million, much of it secured through oil investments that transformed him from character actor to quiet businessman. Faye Dunaway as Bonnie Parker. Dorothy Faye. Dunaway was born on January 14, 1941, in Bascom, Florida. At 26 years old, she played Bonnie Parker, the seductive, volatile outlaw in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. Her presence gave the film danger, beauty, and tragic electricity. That intensity had roots in instability. Raised in a military family, Dunaway moved constantly, never settling long enough to feel secure. Her mother's fragile mental health left emotional scars that shaped her own. She poured everything into performance, studying theater and fighting for recognition. Breakthroughs followed. Chinatown and Network proved her brilliance. But each success came with whispers about her temperament. Her romances were equally dramatic. She fell deeply for Marcello Mastroianni, who would not leave his wife despite promising a future together. The heartbreak marked her. Marriage to Peter Wolf in 1974 collapsed under career strain. Her second marriage to photographer Terry O'Neill brought a son, Liam, but ended in 1987. Between film sets like The Thomas Crown Affair and Mommy Dearest, she struggled to hold love and ambition in the same frame. Behind the glamour, Dunaway battled bipolar disorder and alcoholism. Mood swings and emotional extremes affected her relationships and professional reputation. The backlash after Mommy Dearest intensified scrutiny, and her career momentum slowed. In 2024, she publicly confirmed her diagnosis, reframing decades of speculation with painful honesty. Now, Faye Dunaway is 85 years old. She lives quietly, appearing rarely, her legacy secured by an Oscar for Network and a career that defined 1970s cinema. With an estimated net worth of $50 million earned through film, stage, and endorsements, she remains unforgettable. Dub Taylor as Ivan Moss. Walter Clarence. Dub Taylor was born on February 26, 1907, in Richmond, Virginia. At 60 years old, he played Ivan Moss, the aging father of C.W. Moss in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. His brief but memorable presence grounded the film in rural realism and quiet fatalism, adding authenticity to the Moss family dynamic. His path to that moment began in modest circumstances. Taylor was one of 5 children, and his family relocated to Augusta, Georgia, during his childhood, where his father worked as a cotton broker. Formal education ended early, and economic limitations shaped his practical worldview. He entered radio in the 1930s before transitioning to film with small roles in productions such as You Can't Take It With You, 1938. Over the next 5 decades, he appeared in more than 200 film and television projects, becoming a familiar face in westerns and comedies. Notable roles in The Getaway, 1972, and recurring appearances in The Dukes of Hazzard during the 1980s strengthened his reputation as one of Hollywood's most reliable character actors. Unlike many contemporaries, his personal life reflected steadiness. He married Florence Gertrude Heffernan on April 21, 1931, and their marriage lasted 56 years until her death in 1987. They raised 2 children, including actor and painter Buck Taylor, who later gained fame for his role in Gunsmoke. Despite decades of steady work in Hollywood, Taylor maintained a modest lifestyle, often preferring rural surroundings. As the 1990s approached, health concerns emerged. Taylor's extensive workload slowed as cardiovascular complications developed, limiting his appearances after his final film work in the early 1990s. By that time, he had accumulated more than half a century of continuous screen credits. Dub Taylor died on October 3, 1994, in Los Angeles from congestive heart failure at the age of 87. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered near Westlake Village, California. Though he worked in Hollywood for over 50 years and amassed more than 200 credits, his estimated net worth at the time of his death was approximately $500,000. Estelle Parsons, as Blanche Barrow. Estelle Parsons was born on November 20, 1927, in Lynn, Massachusetts. At 40 years old, she played Blanche Barrow, the sharp, frantic wife of Buck in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. Her piercing performance injected chaos into the outlaw saga and won her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress at the 40th Academy Awards in April 1968. But the road to that Oscar was anything but direct. Parsons graduated from Connecticut College in 1949, briefly studied law at Boston University School of Law, then worked as a singer and later as a writer and commentator for NBC's The Today Show in the 1950s before committing fully to acting. She made her Broadway debut in 1956 and earned an Obie Award in 1964 for Next Time I'll Sing to You and In the Summer House. Her Tony-nominated performance in The Seven Descents of Myrtle, 1968, confirmed her as a serious stage force during one of Broadway's most competitive decades. That resilience, however, was tested at home. She married author Richard Gaiman in 1953, and they welcomed twin daughters, Abby and Martha, before divorcing in 1958 as her career accelerated. In 1983, after nearly a decade together, she married attorney Peter Zimroth, who later served as New York City's Corporation Counsel, and they adopted a son, Abraham. Balancing directing Shakespeare for the New York Shakespeare Festival in the 1980s while raising children demanded constant compromise. Her long-running role as Beverly Harris on Roseanne, 1988 to 1997, revived in 2018, introduced her to a new generation and significantly expanded her television earnings. As decades passed, the challenge was endurance. Parsons returned to Broadway in Mornings at 7, 2002, and later starred in The Velocity of Autumn, 2014, earning her 5th Tony nomination at age 86, a rare achievement in American theater history. In 2004, she was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame, cementing a career that spans more than 60 years on stage and screen. Today, Estelle Parsons is 99 years old. She lives largely out of public view, but remains a revered presence in theater circles, with a legacy that includes 1 Oscar, 5 Tony nominations, and decades of Broadway directing. With an estimated net worth of approximately $10 million accumulated from film, television, and stage directing, she stands as one of the last living links to New Hollywood's most daring era. Evans Evans, as Velma Davis. Evans Evans was born on November 26, 1932, in Bluefield, West Virginia. At 35 years old, she played Velma Davis, the young woman briefly entangled in the chaos of Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. Though her screen time was limited, her character added emotional contrast to the violence unfolding around the outlaw couple. Details of her early life remain relatively private, but her professional record reflects steady effort. Evans appeared in more than 25 film and television projects, including a 1961 episode of The Twilight Zone titled 100 Yards Over the Rim, as well as guest roles on Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Gunsmoke. In 1957, she performed on Broadway in The Dark at the Top of the Stairs, working alongside established stage actors and gaining critical recognition. Despite these credits, leading film roles never materialized, and by the late 1970s, her appearances had significantly decreased as Hollywood shifted toward younger stars. Marriage provided continuity outside the volatility of the industry. On December 13, 1963, she married acclaimed director John Frankenheimer, known for films such as The Manchurian Candidate, 1962. Their marriage lasted nearly 39 years until his death on July 6, 2002. Evans made an uncredited appearance in Frankenheimer's film Grand Prix, 1966, and later appeared in The Iceman Cometh, 1973. The couple had no children, and their partnership was marked by discretion. In later decades, Evans withdrew almost entirely from public life. Evans died on June 16, 2024, at the age of 91. Financial records were never publicly detailed, but industry estimates place her net worth at under $1 million, accumulated through selective film, television, and stage work across more than 40 years. Gene Wilder as Eugene Grizzard. Jerome Silberman, known to the world as Gene Wilder, was born on June 11, 1933, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At 34 years old, he played Eugene Grizzard, the nervous young man kidnapped by Bonnie and Clyde in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. His brief appearance hinted at the comic vulnerability that would later define an entire generation of film. That vulnerability began in quiet insecurity. As a shy Jewish boy in Wisconsin, Wilder struggled with confidence and social anxiety, especially after doctors told him to make his mother laugh while she battled illness. He studied theater seriously at the University of Iowa and later in England, refining craft over charisma. Early stage work led to The Producers with Mel Brooks, then to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and Young Frankenstein. Love changed him, and loss shattered him. After 2 early marriages ended in separation, Wilder married Gilda Radner in 1984. Their bond was intense and joyful until ovarian cancer struck her in 1986. He stood beside her through chemotherapy, remission, and relapse. When Radner died on May 20, 1989, he was devastated. He later married Karen Boyer in 1991, finding steadier companionship, yet he remained forever marked by grief. That grief pushed him into advocacy, founding cancer support initiatives in Radner's name. Illness eventually turned toward him. In 1999, Wilder battled non-Hodgkin lymphoma and survived after treatment and a stem cell transplant. Years later, Alzheimer's disease quietly advanced, a diagnosis he chose to keep private so children would not associate Willy Wonka with decline. Gene Wilder died on August 29, 2016, at age 83 in Stamford, Connecticut, from complications of Alzheimer's disease. He passed away listening to Over the Rainbow, a song he loved. His estimated net worth was around $20 million, earned from acting, directing, writing, and collaborations that reshaped comedy. Mabel Cavitt as Bonnie's mother. Mabel Cavitt was born on November 26, 1900. At 67 years old, she played Bonnie Parker's mother in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, cast on the spot while watching filming in her Texas hometown. Her natural presence added authenticity to one of the film's most emotional family scenes. Unlike the stars around her, Cavitt was not a professional actress. She was a school teacher in Red Oak, Texas, living a quiet life far from Hollywood ambition. When filmmakers noticed her during a local gathering scene, they chose her instantly for the role. She had no acting training, no agent, no career plan, just the right face at the right moment. Mabel Cavitt died on November 26, 1988, on her 88th birthday. Her passing carried no Hollywood ceremony, only local remembrance. Financial details were never public, and she lived far from celebrity wealth. Bonnie's mother wept on screen. Cavitt lived quietly beyond it. Proof that sometimes history touches ordinary lives only once. Owen Bush, as policeman. Owen Bush was born on November 10, 1921, in Savannah, Missouri. At 46 years old, he played a policeman in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, a small but crucial figure in the widening net closing around the outlaws. His presence reinforced the steady pressure of law that shadowed the film's final act. His beginnings were modest and unremarkable. Bush discovered acting almost by accident in high school, then worked as a radio announcer and sportscaster in Kansas City before drifting into television. Early collaborations with director Robert Altman opened doors, leading to appearances in Maverick and other episodic series. Yet recognition never exploded. He built a career through persistence, not stardom, becoming one of television's most reliable character actors, frequently appearing in The Andy Griffith Show and countless Western dramas. That steady work defined his middle years. Without widely publicized scandals or headline-making romances, Bush's life unfolded largely through scripts and studio lots. Roles came consistently across the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, including parts in soap operas like Passions. He became the face audiences recognized, but rarely named. Age did not slow him immediately. He continued acting into his 70s, appearing in projects like Best Laid Plans. The industry shifted toward younger faces and faster fame, yet Bush remained dependable, embodying the quiet backbone of American television. Owen Bush died on June 12, 2001, in Los Angeles at the age of 79. The cause of death was not widely publicized. Financial details were never prominently reported, suggesting a modest estate built from decades of steady work rather than blockbuster paydays. Clyde Howdy, as Deputy Clyde William Hootishell, known as Clyde Howdy, was born on May 31, 1921, in Arlington, Ohio. At 46 years old, he played a deputy in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, one of the lawmen tightening the circle around the fugitives. His tall frame and stern demeanor added credibility to the film's escalating tension. His career never reached marquee status. Howdy worked steadily in supporting roles, often cast as authority figures. He appeared in films such as PT 109, 1963, and television series like The Mod Squad, while also serving as a frequent stand-in for Clint Walker on Cheyenne. The work was honest and consistent, yet leading roles never followed. Friendships within the industry, including ties to Lee Stanley and Jed Allen, marked his professional circle more than headlines did. Acting was his path, but the climb was brief. The late 1960s offered promise, yet time would not allow expansion. Then, illness intervened abruptly. In 1969, lung cancer struck, cutting short a career still unfolding. His final months were spent away from cameras, confronting a diagnosis that offered little mercy. Clyde Howdy died on October 3, 1969, in Los Angeles at the age of 48 from lung cancer. His financial standing was never widely reported, reflecting a career built on supporting roles rather than fame. More than 30 years, some of its stars became legends, some faded quietly, and others are now gone. But every one of them helped shape a film that refuses to die. So when you look at the cast then and now, which story surprised you the most? And which transformation hit you the hardest? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the lives behind the classics.